At Sierra, discover top workout gear at incredible prices, which might lead to another discovery. Your headphones haven't been connected this whole time. Awkward. Discover top brands at unexpectedly low prices. Sierra, let's get moving.
With a Venmo debit card, you can Venmo more than just your friends. You can use your balance in so many ways. You can Venmo everything. Need gas? You can Venmo this. How about snacks? You can Venmo that. Your favorite band's merch? You can Venmo this. Or their next show? You can Venmo that. Visit venmo.me/debit to learn more.
You can Venmo this, or you can Venmo that. You can Venmo this, or you can Venmo that. You can Venmo.
The Venmo MasterCard is issued by the Bancorp Bank N.A. pursuant to license by MasterCard International Incorporated. Card may be used everywhere MasterCard is accepted. Venmo purchase restrictions apply.
The only talk show of its kind in the world. This is The Last Show with David Cooper.
Hello and welcome, he said in an accent that sounded neither Australian nor British. Confusing, really. Happy Thursday! Let me tell you about tonight's action-packed show. You may have recently heard a banger on a music streaming service like Spotify and unknowingly were grooving to an AI-generated band. One in particular has duped, confused, fooled over 500,000 users. What's the band? What's the music sound like? That we'll cover, along with other tech industry stories of the day, in about 10 minutes' time. Then, we will dive into one of the strangest, weirdest, and perhaps steamiest corners of medical science. People who are literally allergic to the fluids of their romantic partners. It sounds like a joke, it might be funny, but it's debilitating. So we'll get the immunology of semen allergies, and that'll be next hour. It'll be slightly inappropriate, but medical. That is merely some of tonight's program. We'll tell you more about some of the great stuff you'll hear as we get through it. So let's get through it.
Most shows deliver serious news that you can use. As a point of differentiation, we give you news you can't use. The Last Show with David Cooper and special foreign correspondent Tony Five.
And in tears costing the economy billions news, we are here to discuss a story out of the UK with special crying equals money correspondent Tony Five. Tony, welcome to the show.
David, how much does a tear cost, my friend? What do you think?
Well, I cry a lot during every movie I've ever seen.
Okay.
I don't know if you know that about me. And what it costs me is my girlfriend looking over every time that happens and saying, that guy's a wimp. Maybe I should date someone else. At least that's what I assume she says about me.
I don't think she imposes her masculine assumptions on you, does she?
No, maybe I'm self-imposing that. But I do wonder sometimes, like when a CEO of a company comes out and shows some emotion.
Yes.
Do the markets react? And if so, can we quantify that number? Because that's exactly what just happened recently in British Parliament. And it's such a fascinating story.
David, it is fascinating on so many levels. Our Chancellor Ejeka, who's like the top senior civil servant who's in charge of the finance and the economy of the country, Rachel Reeves, was visibly seen behind the Prime Minister crying. So she had tears. Now, she hadn't had a good time recently, so there was kind of assumptions that she might have lost her job. And just the fact that she cried, it wasn't addressed, wiped £3 billion off the UK economy.
That's so wild that investors can just see like a video of a politician and wreak turmoil on the economy.
Big sell. I think there was 1% against the US dollar. It was a huge effect. It wasn't addressed. So many things around this happened that I've been thinking about. So, for example, Keir Starmer, who's our Prime Minister, didn't address it. So when someone said to him, are you going to keep her on? He didn't say anything. He also didn't visibly comfort her. So there's criticism on him being cold-hearted and callous. Because she didn't admit it, nothing was said. The only statement that the office made was that it was a personal matter. So obviously, there you go. So every competing politician was on it, what's going on. So there is I know when you're in public office, there's no privacy, right? But I did think it showed a really nasty part of humanity for me. And I think within the last maybe 10, 15 minutes ago, she has just come on and said, on the local sort of platforms and said, yeah, I did have a bit of a rough day yesterday. Everybody has a rough day. I had a bit of a rough day. She hasn't expanded. You don't know why. We think we know it's nothing to do with a job. But she could have just had a bad day, and I don't know whether that's going to make the markets go up. I don't know whether it's going to go up by 10 billion today because she said she's had a great day, and she had a fortune cookie this morning. But it is amazing how a personality, something that can just affect you in silly little ways, can have such a massive effect, right?
I wonder if that would give me a great sense of power, knowing that a photograph of me crying or a little video of me crying could wipe billions off of an economy. It's kind of like negative power, but it's power nonetheless.
But imagine the stress, though. Imagine the pressure.
I mean, this is why these politicians get in this job. Now, I do wonder, like, if that happened in the U.S. with the Treasury Secretary, or maybe in Canada, where I'm from, with the Finance Minister, if they were caught crying and the government didn't explain it, would there be quite the wipe-off of market value as there is in the UK? Because you guys are so like repressed and you never talk about your emotions. And so when a little bit of emotion shows in the public eye, the media blows up in the UK. I'm not saying it doesn't happen in North America. I'm just not sure it happens quite as much.
No, but we're famously repressed. I mean, so famous that showing somebody in the background being a bit tearful. She wasn't like full blown, hubbing and bubbing and, eyes red and streaming, just a little bit tearful. It could have been anything. She could have been thinking about something sad. She could have watched Bambi that morning, or, a close friend could have died. You just don't know.
Whoa, what if Bambi was her close friend? We're blowing the lid on this one, aren't we?
And had set sail on Titanic.
The documentary Titanic with
the documentary Titanic,
yeah,
where Bambi was wearing that Heart of the Ocean around his neck. Mm-hmm. Oh my God, David!
I'm flying, Jack.
I'd be crying now.
I would be too. He could have just gotten on that piece of wood with her in the end, and he wouldn't have.
David, don't start me on that.
Yeah.
I've done the measurements. Leo could have lived. Yeah, it's ridiculous. But
hashtag free Leo.
Hashtag free Leo. Hashtag he could have swam. I think, like, recently Donald Trump swore on live TV, right?
That's such an interesting one because he's the president. I don't think media outlets had to censor the profanity. I'm not going to risk my job by playing the clip, but I'm pretty sure if I did, him saying the F word wouldn't actually get us in trouble because he's like an official head of state or whatever.
So he can say that, but we can't.
Rude. Double standards.
Isn't that straight? But it is though, right? If you step back from it and actually look at it, the fact that he showed, I mean, it was an emotion. He was angry. He was frustrated. And he just said what he said. And should he not have, because he is the president? Or should he have been more like us, more restrained and more reticent to show emotion? Or was it great that he just went, well, this is what they are? What do you think?
I don't even know, man. I can't. It's so hard to predict that guy's behavior. I know, right? It's that I feel like I'd need a PhD in psychology, and even then I wouldn't be able to do it. What's interesting to me is like when money gets wiped off of the economy.
Yeah.
It's just like dudes, I feel like it's always dudes in suits dragging things from one side of the screen to another. And here they're like a whole class of working people, like their pensions drop or their 401ks drop.
Yes.
And like at the end of the day, when we hear about billions or trillions being wiped off, these huge imaginary numbers, it's literally people just dragging things from one side of the screen to the other. And that's their whole job. And they can cause economic turmoil based on seeing a video of some poor woman crying because of a personal matter.
And I think it's even worse than that. I think it's because they've heard of the woman crying. They've not even seen it. And it's like Control-C, Control-V. They're pressing like shortcuts on Excel somehow, somewhere. And it's causing all these problems. And enough people do it and enough people, respond to it. And then all of a sudden, all this money gets wiped off. It's insane.
And this is how these people afford super yachts, just by moving one cell to another in an Excel spreadsheet. Meanwhile, I'm shouting in this microphone every day, and I can barely afford my super yacht.
I mean, I can barely afford to listen to you to talk about your super yacht.
Would I even want a super yacht?
I don't know.
I recently I was looking at the list of people who had super yachts, and Bill Gates has one.
Yes.
And isn't Bill Gates supposed to care about the environment and the world? And those things create a lot of pollution. I'm thinking even if I had billions, I probably wouldn't invest it in a super yacht. That's just me.
When you buy a super yacht, you hemorrhage money like tens of thousands of dollars daily, right? So
yeah, you got to staff it, you got to fuel it. They don't just sit in their parking spot for free.
Yeah. Funny fact, I used to work on developing systems for super yachts
Oh,
when I moved to Letchworth. So I have actually been on a number of huge super yachts, a lot of Russian billionaire super yachts, and they're on a constant cleaning cycle because obviously they're in a harsh environment, salt water. So they're constantly being cleaned, constantly, like around the clock, because of corrosion. But I mean, these things are just palaces on the sea.
from corrosion to billions being wiped off on the market, that's what you'll hear on this show that you won't on others, for better or for worse. Tony Five is our foreign correspondent in London, England. Tony, always a pleasure having you on the show.
In sickness and in health, my friend.
Up next, an extremely popular new group on Spotify a lot of people are grooving to is secretly AI music. What? What has the world come to?
Want to be part of the last show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644.
This episode is brought to you by State Farm. Knowing you could be saving money for the things you really want, like that dream house or ride, is a great feeling. That's why the State Farm Personal Price Plan can help you save when you choose to bundle home and auto. Bundling, just another way to save with the Personal Price Plan. Prices are based on rating plans that vary by state. Coverage options are selected by the customer. Availability, amount of discounts and savings, and eligibility vary by state.
The human algorithm, where emotional inputs create unexpected outputs. The Last Show with David Cooper.
That fantastic hit you just heard on Spotify, well, it might not have been a real artist. It might have been an AI-generated band that you were unknowingly bopping your head up and down to. I'm joined by Carmi Levy. It is time for Technology Time as we look at stories from the tech sector. Carmi, welcome to the show.
Good to be here. Thanks for having me, David.
I recently discovered a Phil Collins song that has flown under the radar. I had never heard it before, and it's really good. It is called Don't Lose My Number. I don't know how I missed this track because it's really good. My girlfriend also missed the track, Carmi, and she came home the other day from work. I'm like, check out this Phil Collins song that we missed. And she's like, are you sure it's real? Are you sure it's not an AI song? And the answer to that question is yes, but the fact that she's now doubting any good music with a certain amount of mistrust that's where we're at these days.
We are. We're being inundated by what experts like to call AI slop, which is basically AI-generated content that's designed to sound like mainstream whatever. It could be writing, it could be video, it could be music. And we're starting to see more of it show up and get popular on music streaming platforms like Spotify and others. And one in particular, there's this band called the Velvet Sundown that is generating a huge amount of buzz. They've gone from nothing to about 750,000 followers in less than a month. And in fact, I've been following them kind of day by day through the week. They're adding 100,000 followers on Spotify alone by the day. And yet, if you go online and you look for the actual band members, they don't exist. In other words, they don't exist outside of Spotify. They don't even have like a Google profile, nothing on social media, nothing at all. And the music, it sounds like sort of like classic rock, very generic, but they talk about dust and wind a lot, which apparently is a very popular topic for AI generated content. AI tends to go back to the same things based on what it's been trained on, and apparently for music, dust and wind are common themes.
All we are is dust in the wind. I'm looking at this band, and their hit is called "Dust on the Wind."
Exactly, and multiple variations thereof. Right, their second album, "Dust and Silence," and their third album, "In a Month," is coming out in just a couple of weeks. And so everything about this band screams AI. Everyone online is saying it's AI. It sounds like it, feels like it, it looks like it. Their Instagram feed that just showed up literally last week, all of the photos are clearly clearly AI generated. And there an X account showed up just over the weekend where they claim that they're not AI and they're going to show that they're human, but I doubt it. And this has all of the signatures of being AI generated. And we're going to be seeing more and more of this. And platforms like Spotify aren't doing enough to label the content. You have to look real hard. Deezer has a much stronger labeling rule. And so on some of their content on the Deezer streaming platform, it actually does show that AI was used in the creation of this music, but not on Spotify. And increasingly, you listen to a playlist, a public playlist, and all of a sudden this song is showing up on it. And next thing you know, the algorithm picks up and their numbers continue to go up. Hey, look, if you're into robotic created music, then, more power to you. But at least you should know what it is that you're getting into before you decide to become a fan, because these aren't real humans.
There's two threads that I want to explore in this conversation. One, when people find out, why don't they care? You know what I mean? I feel like I'm this old man on my porch. I'm 90 years old, yelling about the kids running around like, but I'm like, why don't people care?
Yeah.
How are so many people continuing to listen to this? Fine, some don't care much about music. They don't know. They're just naive. They don't give a But those who find out and give a about music, they find out about this and they continue to listen to it. And why don't they care?
I think a lot of people see streaming music as kind of like background music. It's just there. It's on. It's soundtrack to day-to-day life, and it's on, and you don't really pay too much attention to it. And yeah, I'll be that old man screaming right next to you on the lawn, and the kids aren't getting their ball back, by the way, because I think we're losing something in the process. We're losing that connection to actual human artists, and as this content multiplies, it's squeezing out actual human-created content. If you're a kid and you want to form a garage band, who would want to form a garage band if all people are listening to on streaming platforms is AI generated? What is the point of even bothering to pick up a guitar or learn how to play the drums if no one's going to listen because the algorithms have determined that AI bands like The Velvet Sundown are going to be it? To me, I think we've almost lost the war.
I think we have too. The other thing is we are years, months, days, seconds, maybe even microseconds away from people who do care, like you and me, being unable to tell the difference between AI-generated music and real music. It is getting, admittedly, so good. It's honestly almost there. And it's these algorithms and these machine learning models and these large language models and whatever they're using to generate this music, this AI-generated music, it's getting better and better so quickly. There's going to be a future where unless you do your research, and I don't even want to talk about the internet and dead internet theory, and you do your research, but what you consumed is false information generated by AI. Let's put all of that aside. Let's assume you can do research. Unless you do your research, you won't know whether music is AI generated or not. And that is just, it's amazing to me from a technology standpoint, but from someone who loves art making and consuming art, it's sad.
It really is, and it kind of makes me shake my head because I wonder what that future is going to look like, right? The whole reason that I listen to music, for example, is, I like the songs, but once I discover a band or an artist that I really like, I like to learn more about them. I want to know their backstory. I want to know where they came from. And as I listen to that music, any other artist, of course, it's that backstory that makes it such a meaningful experience. If it's simply computer generated, I don't see the point, because I'm not going to want to. I certainly can't go see an AI band in concert, because they don't do concerts, or maybe they do. Someone presses a button, but it just isn't the same. And maybe I do sound like that raging old man, but I think we're reaching a point where artistic integrity is starting to degrade, and we are going to lose something as humans if we allow it to continue unchecked.
Let's also talk about something that has recently been lost. The blue screen of death. What joy it was using Windows 98, the greatest operating system ever created by drunk engineers, I assume. You'd click on one thing or you'd hit print and your whole computer would crash. One little crash in a program could crash the whole operating system. And that ubiquitous, almost, iconic, it almost, to me, made you not hate so much when your operating system crashed. The blue screen of death, that screen by Microsoft, they've had various iterations of it where it shows up and it says, oh, your computer's messed up, you better restart it. They are getting rid of it. The new version of Windows, gone.
Yeah, so the next version of Windows 11, known as version 24H2, as devices that use it get upgraded to this new version of Windows, the blue screen of death is going to go away, but it's going to be replaced by a black screen of death. So if you're a real big fan of the BSOD short form, it still exists, and it'll still show up. And the difference here is that there will be more information on it. It'll show, for example, a stop code or what driver is responsible for this crash, basically giving you, or if you work in a company, the IT department, more information about what's causing this crash. They're also saying that the computer will, it's called the Windows Resiliency Initiative, and that they aim to reduce recovery time to 2 seconds. So if you do get the new black screen of death, it won't be up for very long because your computer will reboot almost immediately. That's the promise, but Microsoft's been making promises about the blue screen of death for about 40 years, that they were going to improve things. Hasn't really happened, and I'm guessing simply changing the color won't. I just want them to keep the sad face emoji because I kind of like that one in the last version. It at least added some humanity to the process while I waited for my computer to restart.
I think it's a bad move on Microsoft. They should do whatever they want with the fancy feature and the fancy recovery and change whatever they want, but keep the color blue.
Right on. Own it.
Own it. Own it. I'm here with Carmi Levy. It is time for technology time. When we come back, we'll discuss how Amazon is rolling out robots on the floor and already pushing people out of the job. And the robots are already pushing. Great tease, David. We'll be back with Carmi.
Want to be part of the last show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644.
Jack Daniels is proudly served in fine establishments, questionable joints, and everywhere in between. So, no matter where you go, in every bar, you'll always know someone by name.
Jack.
Jack and Coke?
Shot of Jack?
Jack Daniels, please.
Right away.
That's what makes Jack, Jack.
Please drink responsibly. Responsibility.org. Jack Daniels and Old No. 7 are registered trademarks. Copyright 2025 Jack Daniels. Tennessee whiskey. 40% alcohol by volume. 80 proof.
Broadcasting intimate details and useless information from an undisclosed location in New York City. The Last Show with David Cooper.
We are back with Carmi Levy, a technology expert, to discuss things on It's Time for Technology Time. A modern warehouse for a huge, let's be honest, I feel like Amazon, most of what they do is logistics. It's not just like the end result, it's buying it from a supply chain, loading a factory, packing your order, shipping it on time, within 2 days or 1 day, whatever. And the amount of robotics that are used by Amazon, even before the modern AI, fear, uncertainty, and doubt era of the last 2 or 3 years, has been amazingly high. And it's just getting more amazing. Now, it's amazing from a technology standpoint, but not so much for humans who work on the floors of these factories or warehouses or whatever.
Yeah, not at all. In fact, if you look at the numbers, and one statistic really stands out. 10 years ago, if you worked in an Amazon warehouse or fulfillment center or distribution center, just those giant facilities, on any given day, you would be expected to ship 175 packages. Whereas today, that number is 3,870. So,
what? Yeah, obviously it's robot assisted.
Of course, and that's all thanks to automation, thanks to robotics, thanks to technology, and that includes artificial intelligence as well. So the numbers are going up, but the fact that the numbers are that big, while at the same time the average number of people per facility continues to go down, it is now down, according to the Wall Street Journal, to 670 employees per facility, the lowest it's been in 2 decades. As the company confirms that it now has more than 1 million robots at work in these various fulfillment centers. That's compared to about 1.5 million humans. So the trend lines are pretty clear. More robots, fewer humans doing more work, and the company's promises that they've been making all these years that it's not going to replace humans, it's going to allow them to do more value-added work, it'll move them up the food chain and make all sorts of promises. Now, their CEO, Andy Jassy, is saying the quiet part out loud. He is saying that they will ultimately need, and quote, fewer people doing some of the jobs that are being done today. So essentially, the era of trying to limit people's concerns over the robotic revolution is now over. Now Amazon is openly admitting we are replacing people. And that, obviously, if you work for Amazon, you might want to update your resume.
Quiet part out loud. It's always so disconcerting. Like, it's not that they believe these things, that they think they're so on the right side of history in terms of like how they treat their employees. They'll just openly say it to everybody. But honestly, are we surprised here?
We shouldn't be, because Amazon is a publicly traded, profit-seeking company. And so if technology, and again, I don't say this because I find it a positive thing. I don't. I find it odious. But profit-seeking companies have routinely behaved in ways that make their shareholders happy, that they grow, that they maximize revenue, minimize costs, drive efficiency and productivity, even if it means that they don't rank so high on worker satisfaction studies. And Amazon, obviously, has some, the Department of Labor in the U.S. Has routinely found that their fulfillment centers fail to keep workers safe and expose them to high-risk conditions. But hey, as long as the stock price is moving in the right direction, investors are happy. And I say that with every bit of dripping cynicism that I can possibly muster. This is the world we live in now, and we ask for it because we want to get those cheap goods delivered to our house tomorrow. We can't have one or the other, or well, we can have both. We can have efficiency, but that's going to come at a cost. This is the cost.
As long as I can get my underpants within 2 days or less, which are a great novelty thing you can buy on Amazon. It's underpants for your hands. It's like gloves that look like underwear.
You could thank a robot for it.
I gotta hand it to myself, if that makes no sense. I gotta call myself out here. Here I am criticizing the company, but do I enjoy like Prime delivery and getting whatever I need by a click of a mouse without having to head to a department store? Yeah, I do.
Yeah, and that is, it's kind of a sad fact of modern life. I appreciate that convenience as well, and there is a back end to that convenience, and I think all companies, the e-commerce companies, retailers like Amazon, Walmart, of course, has similar infrastructure at its back end. Probably wouldn't hurt for us all to open our eyes a little bit and start making, more, not necessarily better decisions or different decisions, but at least more informed decisions about who we buy from, how they treat their employees, and kind of what that balance between, employee health and profitability is. Because it seems that Amazon leaning far toward driving robotics and not necessarily looking out for the interests of the people who work for them.
I would probably wait 3 days for a set of underpants rather than 2 in order for workers to be treated better. That's I'm willing to do that.
I'm with you. Yeah, exactly. I can be patient. I'll keep using my old threadbare pants until then.
One of the reasons I purchase things in store instead of online, and this is not because I'm a good person and I care about the environment and don't want to waste shipping and packaging.
Oh, sure, you're a good person.
Well, that's
of course you are.
And coming up next, my ex-wife on the show to answer that question. Anyway, so when I buy clothing, like to try it on because I don't know. I just don't trust a random pair of jeans or a shirt or a button-down shirt like from some random store online. Who knows what a small is? Who knows how it's going to fit my shoulders, my waist, whatever. That's kind of my biggest thing. I will not buy clothes online unless I've already bought the exact same size item from the retailer before, which is almost never. Google has launched a product kind of aimed at people like me. It's called Doppel. It's spelled like one of these stupid tech companies, DOPPL instead of with the E, whatever. I guess doppelganger. I don't really know what they're going for with that.
I guess, yeah, I can't quite figure that out.
But it's an app to let me visualize what an outfit might look like on me. And I don't know if I would use it, but there are people like me that might, which could convince them to buy clothing online, which to me is the last bastion of in-store retail. Like that is the one thing I refuse to refuse to buy online for. Once you cut that off the list, I might never leave my house.
Right on. I mean, if I'm buying paper towel online, I know what I'm getting, but clothes are a whole different ballgame. And so what Doppel does, you upload a full body picture of yourself and then...
Naked or with clothes?
Take your pick. I mean, I would use clothes if you do naked. Just let me know in advance so I don't accidentally, cross paths with it. But then as you're scanning social media or you come across a photo of an outfit that you like, whatever it is, or even if you're out and about and you see someone wearing something or you see it in a store, you could take a picture of it and then you throw it into Doppel and it actually takes that image and it puts it on that digital version of you. And it allows you to see what that outfit looks like on you. So how does it hang? You can even create a video from the still shot and it'll show you how it moves on you. How does it look when you put your hands in the pockets? It's those sort of small intangible things that you up until now have only gotten by trying something on. Well, now that can sort of be replicated in this experimental app. And I'm thinking this is neat because you're right. This is the last bastion of e-commerce. It's one of the last areas where we still go to brick and mortar retail because there's just no replacement for trying something on in the flesh. Whereas this app can maybe replace that, which I'm guessing if you're a brick and mortar store, you might want to be watching this app very closely because it's yet another reason for people to stay home and just shop with their phones.
So all I have to do is scan my body naked, like you say, send you those photos, but then also send it to the app.
That's right.
Is it going to be tied to any retailer or it can be any outfit, any body, boom, it uses AI to mash them together?
If it's supported in Google, so it's a standalone app, you download it, but it replicates features that were already included in Google Shopping. And so anything that you could have bought on the Google Shopping platform, which is pretty much any retailer who signs up to that platform, they will be able to use, like, the Doppel will work as a front end to that. So yeah, pretty much anything, anywhere, anyone, any body. It's they call it virtual try-on technology, and it's kind of neat. And it's one of those things, though, it feels experimental today. In a couple of years, this is going to be normal. And this is going to be how many of us shop for clothes, like it or not.
I'm imagining years after that, the landscape of retailers in cities, like clothing stores won't need to have as many stores. Like, what are downtown cores going to look like when everything's online?
Yeah.
Carmi, regrettably, it is no longer time for technology time. Thanks so much for being here, my friend.
Appreciate being here, David. Thank you.
Carmi Levy is a technology expert. Up next, the idea of chosen family in queer communities. Okay, I know I'm late on Pride Month for this one. But when you identify as queer, having friendships with people like you is very important. But when researchers looked at it, there's nuance. Friendships with those that reflect your values in queer spaces, while they improve well-being, they can also lead to loneliness. It's a surprising finding, and we'll dig into why in just a few moments.
Want to be part of the last show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644.
Have you ever spotted McDonald's hot, crispy fries right as they're being scooped into the carton? And time just stands still. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
We're here because your heightened awareness deserves heightened entertainment. The Last Show with David Cooper.
Queer friendships can boost well-being, community, but they're more complicated than you might think. I am joined by an assistant professor of communications who studied how friendships between queer people impact life satisfaction, loneliness, and also looked into why having friends with shared identities can bring both comfort and unexpected challenges. She works at the University of Kentucky. Her name is Dr. Jess Dominguez. Jess, welcome to the show.
Hi, happy to be here. Generally, my research focuses on how established relationships, like friendships, for example, do everyday relationship maintenance through communication technology and in-person interactions. This particular article really focused on understanding more about friendship as a relationship in whole, and what it might do for queer people, because those two particular areas aren't super well studied or understood in the field of communication for a variety of reasons.
It's certainly true for people who aren't queer, but very much is true for those who are. This idea of found family, that your bonds and your friendships are like so important for having a sense of well-being, community. What makes friendships like that in queer spaces like uniquely important?
There's the obvious reasons. I think a lot of queer youth today still struggle to maintain relationships with their families of origin. As they're coming out, once they've come out, there's been a lot of research to show that their parental relationships become really strained. Sometimes they do get ostracized from the rest of the family. Of course, there's the alternatives where the family loves them unconditionally and things work out well. But the more tragic side of that story, where people get kind of isolated from their family of origin, they need people. You need a community for instrumental reasons, like you need guidance through college. You need to know how to fix your car. You need to know how to make a grocery list. All these things that you would essentially learn through your young adulthood years from your parents or other family members. But if you don't have access to those kinds of relationships, who do you learn how to be an adult from? Who do you learn how to do adult things? And so queer people tend to lean on their friends who might be older, might be more experienced, to kind of fill in these gaps where we might rely on our family members to teach us how to be independent, self-sufficient, et cetera, et cetera.
I was struck by the work you did because you showed that, or you wrote that queer friends can boost life satisfaction for individuals, but also increase loneliness, which to me seems paradoxical, counterintuitive. Can you speak more about this?
Yeah, totally. That also kind of shocked us and kind of, frankly made us kind of sad, me and my co-author. But it's important, and it's one of the things I find really special about the paper. I think it highlights the complexity of being a queer individual and being in a queer friendship, where on the one side, you're able to get all these benefits like life satisfaction or connection or, community with people who truly understand you. At the same time, you have to battle this feeling of loneliness and feeling disconnected. And I think it just highlights this broader feeling of being queer and of being a marginalized person, where you both have acceptance and have people for you, but you're also an outsider at the same time. And so the way we kind of worked through these findings was that it's great to have people like you around you, but that might also make certain things much more obvious. Having your own little group of people is great, but then when you're interacting with these people and you get to know them and you hear their stories of their experiences and it aligns with you, it might highlight just how much you are pushed towards each other because you're pushed out of something else and pushed to the other outsiders.
So a shared bond with someone with similar experiences might remind you of how you and that person might feel like they don't belong in certain elements of society, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it's a tough line to, I think, walk. And I think the other part that was really interesting was that out of these, I think it was like an 800 person sample, most of them reported having one other queer friend. The majority of the people in their close friendship network happened to be straight. And so that was also kind of interesting to see that, yes, they have another queer friend, but for most of them, it was just one other person. And so when we think about what kind of value having similarity in our friendships holds, having that one person is huge. But it's also a reflection of, at least in the US, that being queer is still a minority. And so you might be able to find these people. And if you happen to have multiple queer friends as a queer individual, then you should definitely cherish that, because that is certainly not quite the norm yet.
I'm a little surprised and maybe saddened by that number. I guess I grew up in Toronto. The next place I lived was San Francisco. Now I live in New York. I've got this bias that there's just lots of queer folks around, but I imagine that's not true for many, many people.
Yeah, that's another kind of sad part. So I grew up in Los Angeles, and then I went to Kansas for grad school, and that was kind of a big shift. And I learned, most red states do all have their blue dots, and that is where I think queer people can feel safe, but it's kind of like a unfair trade. You get one singular space that you can go and find other people and feel community in those spaces. But then what exists beyond those spaces? Where else can you find these people? And for the people who are outside of those blue dots or outside of those determined places where we think are safe, where do they get to find their community? If not in physical spaces, in digital spaces, where do we find people who are like us?
There had to have been positive findings here. To get a little bit personal, I am straight. My brother is gay. And at his bachelor party, I was in a small house in Fire Island in New York, which is like, I don't know, gay Mecca. And just observing those bonds and that tightness of those friendships and the joy that they brought. Is that something that you see as well? Like these tight-knit communities can really give people a sense of belonging as well as maybe affirming loneliness in some cases?
Absolutely. And I think that like comes back to this double-edged sword. Like, yes, there is limited spaces. There are not a lot of queer people that we know of yet in the US. But at the same time, when you find those people who deeply, truly understand like these core experiences of who you are and how you identify, that makes you feel obviously connected. You feel like I'm not alone. There is somebody who has experienced things like this to me. And for some people, like it's kind of like a relief almost to know that their experience is not just unique to themselves. It's kind of like that whole are there not aliens out in the universe? Like if there are, that's kind of scary. But if there is no other life out in the universe and we are by ourselves, that's also kind of scary. So at a much more like micro scale as a queer person, like to meet another queer person, to know that you're not alone in this and that you have people to confide in, that you have people to share good and bad moments with who can talk about and just get it without having any explanation, to just know what you're feeling, know what you're going through. That is truly special. And I'm sure is what you witnessed at Fire Island.
It was. For anyone listening who's reflecting on their own relationships, perhaps they're queer and thinking, oh, like some of the stuff you're saying, the negative stuff as well, rings true. Any suggestions or takeaways for them?
I know it can feel kind of cheesy, but definitely put yourself out there in a safe space to make friends. A lot of like queer-friendly establishments host monthly events. Coffee shops might host like open mic night, or there might be like a special happy hour at a bar or something. And like, I think a lot of those concepts, especially for Gen Z and elder millennials, might feel kind of cheesy to like go and do like an organized friendship meeting, but those definitely pay off. And I think a lot of people forget that you don't just become good friends overnight. You have to go through those awkward beginning moments of time to develop that relationship.
Well, Dr. Jess Dominguez is an assistant professor of communication at the University of Kentucky. Jess, I've enjoyed the chat. Thanks for sharing your research with me.
Yep.
Up next, the science behind being allergic to your romantic partner's fluids. This is no joke and fascinating and weird.
Want to be part of the last show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644.
The spirit of innovation is deeply ingrained in America, and Google is helping Americans innovate in ways both big and small. Central Texas Regional Mobility Authority is using Google AI to create smarter tolling systems and improve traffic flow for Texans. This is a new era of American innovation. Find out more at g.co/American Innovation.
Please be advised that the following program contains audio content that may be graphic and potentially triggering for some listeners. This content may include descriptions or sounds that some may find disturbing. Listener discretion is strongly advised. This is The Last Show with David Cooper.
Tonight, we're going to dive into one of the more strange and maybe steamy corners of medical science. People who are literally allergic to their romantic partners. We're going to chat about things like, well, I'm just going to say it, semen allergies and perhaps mysterious body odor reactions. Intimacy can get funky when it meets immunology. I'm here with Professor of Medicine at the University of Cincinnati College of Medicine who's researched this. His name is Dr. Jonathan Bernstein. Jonathan, welcome to the show.
How are you? Thanks for having me.
I am well, and I'm excited to jump in. I actually know someone who has this, so it doesn't surprise me so much, but I'm sure a lot of people would be surprised to hear that people can have semen allergies. Is this different from other allergies like pollen or peanuts or shrimp or shellfish, anything like that?
But mechanistically, no. I mean, depending on the type of semen allergy, there's the type that does where people do produce allergic antibodies called IgE. That stands for immunoglobulin E, and those are made in specific response to a protein. So if you had a tree pollen allergy, you're developing these antibodies to the tree pollen. In this case, patients are developing these antibodies to proteins in the seminal fluid. Not to the spermatozoa, which is what's fertilizing the egg. It's to the actual fluid that kind of supports the spermatozoa. So when we look at these patients, we remove the spermatozoa to measure the antibodies in the seminal fluid. So these women who, if they have a systemic form of this condition where they have hives and wheezing and all kinds of symptoms, maybe gastrointestinal symptoms, and in the worst extent, their blood pressure drops and they can have what we call anaphylaxis. Those are patients who make an allergic antibody, like you said, to other allergens, whether it's a food or a pollen and so forth.
So in some cases, this is no simple rash. This can be like EpiPen, hospital, serious allergic reaction.
That's correct.
One thing that happens during sex, I don't mean to be a sex educator here, is when someone creates semen at the end during orgasm, that's not the only time that these fluids get released. They get released all throughout sex. And so this can really have a debilitating effect on someone's ability to have sex, can it?
It can be. It has a significant impact on people's interpersonal relationships. And certainly once they can figure this out, they can don a condom before they even begin intercourse, begin introitus. But that can be a problem if individuals don't like that, or they want to have children, they're trying to conceive. So there's a lot of unintended consequences. And a number of these women also have what we call localized seminal plasma hypersensitivity, where it's not an IgE, allergic antibody mediated condition, but it's due to other pathways that are not as well defined, but they have severe localized pain, burning after contact with their partner's seminal fluid. That's a different mechanism, but it's nonetheless something that if they use a condom, that can be prevented. And there are other treatment options.
Now, could it be that one individual is allergic to only another, or could you be allergic to all men's semen? Or it's kind of sad that if you are allergic to only a certain type of partner and then it just so happens that's the partner you're with, can have a detrimental effect on the relationship.
That's a good question. And we did ask that in questionnaire surveys. And many of these women are not very promiscuous. They don't have a lot of sexual partners, so it's not always known. But we've had situations where they've said they've had it with other partners, but others who said, no, I never had trouble with other. Now, that could mean that they were sensitized with their first partner, and then they developed the antibody, and then with their second partner, they had the reaction. So every time you have an IgE-mediated reaction, you have to have exposure where the body becomes sensitized. You make the antibodies, and then upon re-exposure, that's when the reactions occur. So, and there's a latency period between that time of first exposure and the development of allergic antibodies and the next exposure where you have the symptoms. So it's still unclear.
Moving away from semen, could it be that people are allergic to each other's scent? I was reading a little bit about this too, like certain, body odors could cause an allergic reaction?
Well, it's an interesting question. Typically, we know that for seminal fluid allergy, it's the prostate-specific antigen, PSA, which is a marker for prostate cancer, but it's not related to cancer. This is the protein that women are sensitized to the most part. So it is a well-defined protein that is causing this reaction. Now, with respect to body odor, that's a different question, and that's not likely an allergic reaction. And there could be other reasons depending on the types of reactions the women have. Whether it's a contact dermatitis, some respiratory symptoms. So I could give you an explanation for that, but I think it's probably beyond the the scope of this discussion.
What are some of the ways in which like a bad response to someone's scent can happen?
Well, there are receptors in the body called TRP receptors, and these are calcium ion channels, and they're stimulated by mechanical, osmotic, and chemical stimuli. So chemicals in the body odors can actually activate these receptors and innervate the parasympathetic nervous system, as well as other nociceptive nerve fibers that can cause depolarization, release of neuropeptides that could activate mast cells and cause these types of symptoms that you see with seminal fluid hypersensitivity. So it's a neurogenic response.
I'd like to say I understood every word you just said. So
well, I warned you.
You did. Back on the thread of talking about semen allergies, we do a lot of comedic work on the show, and it's a fun topic, but I feel like this is something to speak about because it's debilitating, because it can affect like somebody's ability to have a family, enjoy their romantic relationship with their partner, but also I feel like they aren't going to get a lot of pity. You speak up about this ailment, and you get made fun of because it seems silly, and that's kind of sad to me.
Yeah, and there's a lot of conditions where people don't understand it. It's and if you don't have the right doctor who listens to the patient and really tries to understand what's going on, these patients will feel a little bit lost, and they do a lot of their own investigative research. And a lot of times patients are more astute about diagnosing or self-diagnosing than their physician. So it's important that we do create awareness in the medical community, and that in medicine, nothing is impossible. And there's always, every time people poo-poo things, that's when things can happen. So I've been around long enough to know that there's a lot of unusual things that are not readily explained in a textbook, but that there are reasons for why it's occurring. And we're learning more and more about alternative pathways, as I explained with the odors, and other processes. But this is a real condition. Fortunately, probably not very common, but it does occur. The localized form is probably more common. Well, 2 women have the severe pain and burning, and that is also treatable. Both conditions can be treated with desensitization to semaglutide.
And those symptoms, descriptions like it feeling like acid, like 1,000 needles, just from being intimate with your partner. It's perplexing and maybe upsetting for those experiencing it. Do you think this has gone underdiagnosed or misdiagnosed because physicians don't know about it, or people aren't willing to speak up about what they're experiencing?
I think it's a combination. I think it's something that it's not recognized, but it's probably not overly common, but it does occur with probably some consistency.
Well, Dr. Jonathan Bernstein is a partner at Advanced Allergy Services at Cincinnati. He's a professor of medicine at the University of Cincinnati College of Medicine. Jonathan, thanks for talking to me today. This was an interesting chat.
Thank you very much. I hope it was useful.
Up next, when you blend comedy and music and singing about being a vegan but still being regrettably overweight because you just eat mac and cheese, that is what you find with the performer we're about to have on the show for a laugh. I'm excited. His name's Avery Pearson, and I think you'll like meeting him in a few moments.
Want to be part of The Last Show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. With the price of just about everything going up, we thought we'd bring our prices down. So to help us, we brought in a reverse auctioneer, which is apparently a thing.
Mint Mobile Unlimited Premium Wireless. How to get 30, 30, bit to get 30, bit to get 20, 20, 20, bit to get 20, 20, bit to get 15, 15, 15, 15, just $15 a month? Sold!
Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. New customer offer for first 3 months only. Speed slow after 35 gigabytes if network's busy. Taxes and fees extra. See mintmobile.com.
Where intellectual honesty gets witness protection from social prosecution. The Last Show with David Cooper.
Our guest blends sharp, silly, heartfelt comedy with live piano, with music. Think comedy club meets concert hall. He writes original songs that are clever, emotional, and sometimes ridiculous. If Ben Folds and Bo Burnham had a Canadian cousin, it might just be comedian Avery Pearson. Check him out at Comedy Bar Danforth, where he'll be performing at July 10th. That's in Toronto, Canada. Or his new special on Veeps called Give It Up. Avery, welcome to the show.
Thank you. That's the greatest introduction I've ever had in my entire life.
It's important to start strong and then have it all go downhill from there. Just like my cantor told me during my bar mitzvah. Big beginning, weak finish, I think is his advice to me.
Just get up there and don't yourself.
Belt it out. Tell me a little bit about yourself for those who might not have heard your musical comedy before.
I mean, that description was wild. I mean, yeah, look, all that stuff. I do comedy music. I'm originally from Toronto, and I've just been around everywhere in New York and LA. And basically, I never kind of had an outlet as an actor, because you can't really talk about yourself. You're always doing someone else's story. And then I sort of fell into comedy and found that you could just like take your insecurities and write songs about them, and people would like listen and like them. And so that I do that, and it's been really, really rewarding and awesome. So I'll do like, a Billy Joel-esque song about broken dreams and trying to make it, and just, nothing wrong with dreaming, don't be delusional. And so I'll do like, just different styles of songs. I have like a Linkin Park song about indigestion, and I just want to have fun and do these great comedy songs.
And one about being overweight and being vegan, which is not the oxymoron that people think it is.
Yeah. Well, I have this like song. It goes, actually, this is fun. All right, here. So it's like a, all right. I grew up in Toronto. Parents were too nice to me. Gave me allowance till I was 33. All I ever spent that on was weed. I'm not equipped to be a father. I can barely take care of myself. I'm vegan, I got fat. How the did I manage that? I ate mac and cheese at 4 a.m.
There it is.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, I feel like you hear vegan, you think carrots, but no, potato chips are vegan.
Yeah, I'm going to be perfectly honest. I'm going to really come at it on this. I'm vegetarian, but it's funnier to say vegan.
Yeah.
And I'm dissolving all of the mystery out there for all of our listeners. I'm vegetarian, but I did eat mac and cheese late at night, but it's funnier to say vegan than vegetarian. It's more punchy.
At the commercial break, you were telling me how you fell into being a musical comedian, not because it was like your childhood dream at 4 a.m., but through a series of kind of serendipitous events, you found your medium. Tell me more about that.
Well, I was, when I was growing up, I didn't realize that you could do comedy music in general. Like, it wasn't there for me. I think, you knew Weird Al. I knew the Hanukkah song.
Adam Sandler, yeah, classic.
And I love all of his albums, and but I didn't really go, oh, I can just keep making comedy music. And I really loved acting, and I wanted to be an actor, and pursued it really hard. I went to Concordia, and went to Unionville High School, the Arts York program up there for all my Markhamites, Markham Marauders.
Love it.
And then I was sort of gave up in New York, and I felt like I was defeated by the city.
New York has a great way of, no matter how good you feel about yourself or your career, it has a way of making you feel small at every turn, at new and creative turns every second of the day.
Yeah, but the pizza's great. So you keep going, you keep pushing. And I felt like I lost to New York. And then I ended up going back to Toronto, did some TV, did Suits, Meghan Markle days. And then moved down to LA as a vacation. Like, I just went to visit some friends, and I loved it, and I stayed. And I think something in like my mindset changed, because instead of like white knuckling it and trying and working super hard in New York and just trying to make it, I was just kind of hanging, and my girlfriend's like, go get a job at the Hollywood Improv. So I did that. And I was just sort of trying to be nice to people and be a Canadian about it and just be of service and help people. and they had a piano on stage. And so one night I was just playing before the show, and the manager came out and they're like, "You're great, just keep playing." And they opened the doors and 200 people came in and sat down, and like out of nowhere, going from actor with no material other than like diddling the piano to like opening a show at the biggest comedy club one of the biggest comedy clubs in the world. And so I just started like riffing with the audience and like, "Where are you from? What do you do?" And just trying to figure it out. And like, sometimes I would sit there playing piano and people would just be staring at me for like minutes on end, which can seem like an eternity. And, you know, I ended up just being that guy that played the piano at the Improv. And then one night after a shift, I was having a beer at the bar, and my buddy, who was a comedian, came over and he's like, "Jeff Ross wants you." I'm like, "What does he want to drink?" He's like, "No, he's on stage. Like he wants you to go up there." I'm like, "Well, to do what?" And so I got there, and Jeff had heard that I play piano. And he's like, "Play me something sexy." And so I started playing these jazz riffs, stuff that I've been doing since I was a kid, playing piano. And all these comedians just started to like flock to me and wanting me to play under them to support them. And it was super cool because rather than like it being all about me and all about like being an actor and me making it me, I was just there to serve someone else. And, you know, you want to be a star, you want to like make and be a name in bright lights. But I really found my path just like listening to people and helping other people do what they do best. And one thing led to another, and I started a show where I would improvise songs with my friends late at night at the Hollywood Improv. So me and this guy Jeremiah Watkins and Josh Adammeyer would start a show at midnight at the Hollywood Improv on a Saturday night. But the people, you know, so like the 10 o'clock show would end, and we didn't have an audience, so we would just say, "Okay, everyone wait," and we would like rush the stage and try to get everyone to stay and have another round. And that was our job. So I like had to learn how to like make the club more money, be entertaining, and keep someone in a room that had already been there seeing a full epic 2-hour show.
It sounds like you found your medium little by little, which I like. There are creative people out there that look down on others who don't know what their calling is. But I myself, like you, found my calling in broadcasting by accident. I was doing stand-up comedy. I was bad at it. And I went to promote a show that I couldn't sell tickets to on the radio. And I, just like you, found myself on a talk radio program thinking, you can just do this? I didn't even realize you could do it. And there I was, like 27 years old or whatever. And so having found my medium by accident, and it sounds like you kind of found yours little by accident too, I think the best advice for people is just try lots of stuff, be open-minded to things.
Yeah, well, it's also like a little psychotic to be like, "Oh, there's a comedy song. I'm going to make a full career of that." Like, okay, cool. Like I liked Adam Sandler's song, but like, I'm just going to make these songs about holidays. Like you're not going to work. You're not going to do anything. Like, and then so acting, which is much more secure than that, you know, was a ridiculous thing as well. But yeah, I think that if you, it's also like in life, right? Like if you want something too hard, like no one wants to be around that. You know what I mean? Like you date a girl and you're giving her everything. You're going to be too much. You're going to give her the ick. And I think like, unless it's something where you actually like, it's really needed to like give everything you have and work your ass off. But if you appear like that, like always work super hard. But if you appear like that, and if it's coming out and you're letting that out, and the people they're not going to want to attach to it.
There's something about the human condition where if we really want to be liked or really want something so badly, we give off the opposite effect where people don't like us. I don't like that about the human condition, but it is true.
We're horrible people.
Well, check out Avery Pearson, musical comedian at Comedy Bar Danforth in Toronto, where he's performing on July 10th, or check out his special on Veeps. It's called Give It Up. Avery, I've enjoyed the chat. Thanks for being on the show.
Hey, thanks so much, dude.
The things you should never share at work, no matter how much you trust your coworkers. Up next, messy breakups, mental health struggles, and all those off-the-record rants about your boss. We'll cover what topics to keep your mouth shut on at work, or else.
Want to be part of the last show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644.
Don't miss Blinds.com's 4th of July mega sale happening now. Save up to 50%, plus get a free professional measure. Blinds.com invented a better way to shop for window treatments with upfront pricing, no showroom markups, and no salespeople in your home. Choose from classic shutters to outdoor shades and more, all backed by our 100% satisfaction guarantee. Don't miss Blinds.com's 4th of July mega sale. Save up to 50%, plus get a free measure. Rules and restrictions may apply.
The only talk show with an introduction that mentions its own introduction. And that's happening right now in this introduction. The Last Show with David Cooper.
I'm begging for a mention. Yeah, you just want attention.
Oversharing or sharing the right amount in the workplace. That is here what we are That is what we are here to discuss with Matthew Alston, a reporter with Business Insider. Matthew, welcome to the show.
How's it going?
It is going well. I'm glad to have you back. I saw an article, which I think will be a good jumping off point for what we discuss, about things you should share at work. Now, keep in mind, before I was in media, I was in Silicon Valley, San Francisco, before the pandemic, when things are good, you could work anywhere. It was milk and honey. And so in my idea of what you can share in the corporate world is, well, an employer's never going to retaliate against you. Your employees are never going to think anything bad about you. And I know that I'm just wrong in a lot of my theories.
If we rewind a little bit to 2020, 2021, at the Great Resignation, quiet quitting, and that sort of era of overworked where people were working two jobs and not telling their employers, we're in an era, the first time our generation has had labor power. And that was squashed with mass layoffs over the last several years. So we've had a bit of a seesaw in terms of how much power labor has, how much power management and employers have. And so, it is a little different than when you were in, Silicon Valley workforce. But there is a tension now. There's a real tension, and the necessity of remote work for some of these jobs has built a pretty low trust environment.
And with AI taking people's jobs, or at least the fear of it, things are getting even worse.
Or AI helping people do their jobs faster so they can have other jobs on the side, or, there's a lot.
There certainly is. What are some things that I should not discuss at work between my coworkers, openly at the lunch table with my boss?
Yeah, I've been researching this for a piece I'm working on, and I think one of my main takeaways is that, and I think it's bad to steal. I think there are big black lies and little white lies, and I think if you want to keep a little white lie to as a secret, I'm going to work from my Airbnb on Friday and not tell anyone I'm not at my house, kind of thing. Never tell anyone. That point blank, even your best friend at work, don't tell them. If you overlap your old job with your new job for a few days and you're making an extra week of salary, just don't tell them. I think that those things only damage trust in a low trust environment. As much as I'm getting on the radio and telling people to hold their lies close to their chest, I don't think there's any utility in it. I think we all know colloquially or through cultural transmission that HR are not your friends. They really aren't. They really aren't.
Yes. They're there to protect the company, and if they can be your friend along the way, they will.
Yeah. Sometimes a friendly or a good HR person will help you get a raise or help you get hired at a higher salary or help you negotiate something. And they're there for liability. And sometimes that protects you. But in the long run, you kind of, in a increasingly low trust world, you have to teach your job how to treat you. Another thing I was reading about and thinking about writing about is, the idea of sick days and powering through it, telling everyone you're a little under the weather or your kid's home sick, but you're just going to make 3 or 4 meetings and then log off. You're only hurting yourself. You're only signaling to your employer that you're willing to work when you're sick. Take the sick day or don't. But try not to create, alternate realities for yourself in which you're never going to be able to take a sick day.
I don't know if I agree with that one, but like, isn't it okay to say I'm unwell, but I know one or two things are important? I'm going to show up 50% because I have to, and then I'm out for the day, or you're going to get judged adversely.
I don't think it's bad to do that. I think in the long run, it depends on the amount of trust you have between you and your manager. Maybe that's where we're coming down. Another one, I think we already sort of alluded to, is side hustles. I think a third of people have official side hustles where they make a genuine, useful amount of income on the side, and that's half of Gen Z. And only half of businesses or employers have rules about side hustles. So how you manage that is very important with how you communicate it to a job.
There can be a double standard, like if the vice president of corporate marketing sits on the board of another company. Wow, isn't that amazing? She's VP and she's on the board of this other company. But if some junior employee who can barely make ends meet is doing something on the side, it's like, oh, you're doing work outside of work. That's a problem.
I think that's right. I mean, it's a different rabbit hole into how much work the board member is doing for another, how much work that actually is.
Sure.
But at the same, but yes, those double standards abound. And if you have a full-time, if you're a freelancer, how you manage those, client relationships is all about cutting hard deadlines and saying, I'm available for 20 hours this week. If you have a full-time job, I think you can be pretty well assured that if your business can get 42 or 44 or 46 hours out of your time, without you sort of pushing back, they will. So how you put up those walls or don't is also pretty important. Lots of managers now in the age of AI are obsessed with the idea of productivity, which is not a new thing, but it's newly important every day. The bosses will invent the idea for themselves sometimes that you are not productive because they have this knowledge that you're also doing work for someone else.
Yeah, I've heard of companies using like AI tools to monitor the volume of work you put out, words written, lines of code written, clicks done on your computer. It's a scary thing. There's something to be said about not wanting to work for a company like that, but not everyone has a choice. Now, this one, I think, is really a reflection of where my mind was in the corporate world in 2020. I thought you could openly talk about your personal life, your mental health struggles, who cares? Where it's an open work environment, everyone talks about themselves. Are there downsides to disclosing too much about your personal life to your coworkers?
Well, I think it's that sort of, maybe not double standard, but it is, again, a person I don't find much value out of what they've said, but Dr. Phil once said, you teach people how to treat you. I think I've already said that to you today. It's very true. The amount of information you disclose about your personal life is a work tool. It's, you have things outside of work that are very important. My kid has a dance recital. It's on a Wednesday at 1:00 for some reason. And I just have to go to that and I can't be at work. And that is more important than work. Like how you deploy important things in your life around work, because of the nature of work in 2025, unfortunately, you have to be kind of selective about that until you have power, until you have
important family thing that I cannot miss instead of, ballet recital is what you're saying.
Yeah. No, I'm saying that, I get it. But the other thing is, and maybe you're counterfactual to this, but only 20% of people who have side hustles see that as something they want to leave their job for. The actor who wants to be the waiter who wants to be an actor, forgive me, the Silicon Valley guy who wants to be a radio host.
Yeah, no, when I had made that decision, I did not disclose it until I resigned.
Right. And I think maybe that is somewhere where you can come down and it can be a leveraging tool. I'm doing work on the side because you're not paying me enough is very different from how everyone lies about what their 5-year plan is when they're in a job interview.
Well, Matthew, this has been a fun chat about what you should or maybe should do at work in terms of disclosing things. I've appreciated your time. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks.
Matthew Alston is a reporter with Business Insider. Coffee, the magical caffeinated elixir. One week, a guilty pleasure. The next week, science says health benefits. Well, we're starting to realize that caffeine could actually slow aging at a cellular level. How does it work? We'll reveal that on the other side of the break.
Want to be part of the last show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644. Taste the forbidden fruit of knowledge. The Last Show with David Cooper.
When I was growing up, there was mixed messages about coffee and caffeine and its health benefits. One week it's a guilty pleasure, the next it's a health elixir. But now we're starting to realize that caffeine could actually slow down aging, maybe even at the cellular level. I'm here with a biochemist at Queen Mary University in London, England, Dr. John Patrick Alao. JP, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Great to be with you.
So let's look into this. Yeast. It unlocks a secret about caffeine and aging. Tell me about your research.
So basically, yeast, and particularly fission yeast, we call it a micromammal because its cell circuitry is very similar to mammalian cells, basically. And when you don't want to work with the whole organism because it becomes very complex. So even in the laboratory, we have cell lines, which are basically cancer cell lines. So it provided us with a very simple but powerful tool to actually figure out what caffeine is really doing, because it's been of interest for at least 60 years. And this was mainly because it sensitizes cancer cells to anti-cancer treatments. So that was the main thing about it.
So yeast is sort of like a stand-in for human cells when you're researching?
Yeah, basically, it's a lot simpler. So for instance, when it comes to cell division, there's a very important protein called CDC25. And in human cells, there are 3 versions, A, B, and C. Whereas in fission yeast, there's just one. So you understand, it becomes a lot simpler to find out what that is doing. And now that we know what caffeine is doing in fission yeast, we can see if it does similar things in mammalian cells, and then eventually we will take it to a mouse, probably, because it's so complex, the interactions between, when you drink the coffee, obviously the caffeine is hitting the cells in your mouth, it's hitting the cells in your stomach, in our colons, and there it does seem to have an anti-cancer effect, okay? But when you go to the gym and you take a caffeine tablet, because then it increases alertness, it probably increases the blood supply to the muscles. That's a physiological thing. So I don't want to go into that exactly.
Okay, well, let's talk about something called AMPK. What is that, and how is it related to coffee? How does it relate to aging, energy, things like that?
So AMPK, it's actually the long name is AMPK activated protein kinase, and the major energy source cells use is something called ATP. So it's got 3 phosphate molecules on it, and when it breaks them off, it releases energy for cells to perform. This is why you have rigor mortis in dead people. The muscles stiffen up because there's no longer any ATP. So what AMPK and its downstream target of rapamycin, it's a huge complex that integrates the signals the cell is receiving. Are there enough nutrients? Is there stress going on? Hypoxia, for instance, if you don't have enough oxygen. This is a problem with people with obstructive lung disease, for instance, right? It all affects the cells. So AMPK is a sort of sensor that senses the energy state of the cell. So if we are low on glucose, it gets turned on, and it then turns off TOR. And TOR, target of rapamycin, is the major protein that decides if we're in a catabolic state or an anabolic state. That means, for instance, if we don't eat, we start to get thinner, right? So in this case, the TOR is off and we start eating ourselves, basically. This is a very important mechanism for cleaning up all the damaged proteins, even in the brain. So when you have Alzheimer's, neurodegenerative disease, but also the loss of muscle as we grow older. So AMPK, when we found out now, when we expose the cells to caffeine, it gets turned on, not to the same degree as when we withdraw glucose, for instance, but it does slightly turn off these pathways downstream of it, right, including TOR. And I just want to emphasize these proteins the regulation is extremely complex. So if you withdraw glucose, the downstream effects might be very different from what you would get with caffeine, for instance. And that's something that we're very interested in. So we would need to compare it to compounds that actually turn on AMPK directly. There are some on the market. And then we can use this yeast model to see which genes are expressed and which genes are not expressed. Because in cancer, AMPK actually protects cancer cells. So you don't want to use an AMPK activator in certain cancers. Again, this is highly personalized medicine. We cannot predict in which patients AMPK would be activators or even caffeine would be beneficial or not beneficial. But by understanding what's going on, we can then look at the patient's tumor, see how dependent or not dependent it is on AMPK, and then decide to use certain therapies that target this pathway. Otherwise, it's going to do the opposite. So we don't want to run ahead of ourselves. It's a good start that AMPK and caffeine is not new. It's basically caffeine induces a fasting state.
And so for those that there would be this health benefit, this potential anti-aging or anti-cancer benefit, how much caffeine are we talking here? Like 1 cup of coffee, 10 cups of coffee?
So again, the nutritionists, they say, from what I read, again, this is not my field, before 12 o'clock, like I haven't eaten today, I just had tea. So you are in this fasting state. You don't want to drink more than 3-4 coffees a day because then it becomes toxic, especially if you have heart problems. But in a healthy individual, it's most studies, and in fact, caffeine comes from Ethiopia and Arabia. It's a social thing. So again, I'm saying that there is a very strong link between coffee consumption, which contains caffeine. Now, Coca-Cola contains caffeine. So does Red Bull. And Babish was asking, well, are we going to say Coca-Cola extends life? Well, no, of course not, because it's full of sugar.
Mm-hmm.
Also, when you have a cup of coffee, it has so many other substances. One of the main things is antioxidants.
Mm-hmm.
So when we smoke, when we're exposed to stress, we produce free radicals, which is why our skin breaks down, basically, right? So you have this entropy process. And when you have caffeine, we may be able to delay this because it sucks up the oxidants, basically. Diet is linked to metabolic diseases such as aging, diabetes, cancer. So we want to know how to change what we eat, how we eat, and can we use substances like caffeine to help us along the way, is the take-home message.
Do you think there's any risk that people might see research like yours and then overload on caffeine, thinking it's the one-size-fits-all fix for their health problems?
No, I think they already know what will happen if you take too much of it. For instance, they asked me, we've used 10 millimolar in the yeast. If you use that in a human being, anything above 1 millimolar will cause fatal cardiac arrhythmia. So when I go to the gym, I wouldn't take caffeine because of the effects on my heart. Like I'm already putting more stress on my heart. I think it's education, and with programs like this saying, be careful, inform yourself. Don't listen to me. I'm just one of thousands of them giving my opinion on it. But I do drink coffee. I would recommend it, and be sensible. Enjoy hamburgers. I do. Cheeseburgers. I love them.
Me too.
But in moderation. It's the same thing with alcohol and everything else. So we think it's a wonderful drink, and that's why I did it, because it raises a lot of interest that some obscure protein wouldn't do.
I remember growing up like in the 90s, always hearing research that coffee was good, coffee was bad. Why do you think 20, 30 years ago, there was a lot of research saying coffee wasn't good, but now they're saying it is?
Sometimes you have conflict of interest. If someone is trying to sell you tea or substitute Red Bull, or Coca-Cola is going to tell you, no, don't drink coffee, it's not good for you. The other thing is that science basically is fluid. So we say I'm standing on the shoulders of giants. I have technologies and information available to me now that were not available 30 years ago. So, we go with it. It might turn out again that it's actually not good. And that's why we need to know. And then we can speak with the chemists to tweak it, or to use the other substances like theophylline. Tea contains theophylline, not caffeine, but the effect is probably similar.
It's always nice to hear scientists say that, over time we can correct ourselves, we stand on the shoulders, it's a fluid thing. I think a lot of people don't realize that.
Not religion, no.
Well, Dr. John Patrick Alao is a biochemist at Queen Mary University in London, England. JP, thanks for talking to me today. I appreciate your time.
It's been a great pleasure.
That's the show. Thanks for listening to it. Don't forget, The Last Show is available as a podcast. Just head to www.lastshow.pizza. That's lastshow.pizza, not .com. Don't ask me why we chose that. I'm David Cooper, and this is, well, it's certainly not the first show. Good night.
Big Brother is back.
Let's freaking go!
This summer, the game gets hotter, the alliances get trickier, and the blind sides, brutal.
Just a roller coaster of backstabbing and craziness.
New house guests, new twists, same epic drama.
Bro, I'm gunning for you. You're my #1 target.
Who can you trust when everyone's watching?
Game on, baby.
Big Brother. New season Thursday, July 10th on Global. Stream on Stack TV.